ASORedit adds 3D settings to units, objects and groups. To access those, you just double click on a unit, for example, and you'll get access to the unit options. For the group options, it's the icon above the team leader of the group, and this is probably the main one for all the options, is where you can set how the unit or group will behave when they spawn through ASOReDit. So you can see the standard ArmA options there that you'd get from setting a waypoint, for example. And there's also some other ones, force them to be in a crouched position if you want them sneaking around or something like that. Night time you can force them to use flashlights. I don't want to go into too detail on tasks because there's going to be a video on that, but let's say for patrol, just to show you how it works. So the creation radius will be the radius around where the unit is placed that it will spawn. So if I put that to 50 meters, then in a 50 meter radius around where the unit is currently placed in the editor, they'll randomly spawn. And then the same for the task radius. This is where they'll perform the patrol task. So if I put that to 50 as well, the group's gonna spawn when the zone's activated, and then they'll randomly generate waypoints within that 50 meters and start patrolling around. And that waypoint wait time is how long they'll stop at each one of those randomly generated waypoints. When you set the task radius, you then get a circle as well to show where that radius is. One thing to be aware of when you're setting the random creation radius and task radius, if this unit is placed here and you have a creation radius of 50 like this, and they spawn in this grid square here as part of their random spawn location, then their 50 meter patrol radius will then be off this location, so it'll actually be like that. Using larger radiuses, you just got to be aware because it can change quite dramatically. So the populate options you can use to duplicate groups without taking a hit on the amount of objects in your mission. So if I wanted, in this 50 meter patrol radius that I've just set up, if I actually wanted 4 groups of 4 guys patrolling that 50 meter area randomly, I could change this to 4, and I'll now get 4 of the exact same group randomly spawning in the area and patrolling that area. So let's have a quick look what that looks like. So if I walk into the zone, the group starts spawning around in their random 50 meters, and they're in crouch. I left them in crouch. But you'll be able, if you go to Zeus, you can see they've all got their own waypoints in that 50 meter area. You can see this group's here, his 50 meters is here. It's based off where they were spawned. So as well as the patrolling options there, we can tell the group to move into buildings and stuff like that. So nearest building. So it's a quick way of populating a town like that is put the multiplier on, put random spawn positions. They'll spawn in random locations or choose random spawn locations, and then it'll choose the nearest building and put them inside the building. And if they're set to patrol, they'll then patrol that building. You can also say, well, I've got 4 groups, I only want two of them or half of them, same thing, to occupy buildings. 2 of the groups will actually occupy a building and patrol the buildings, while the other 2 groups will just spawn and patrol around the streets within that 50 meter area that you've put on. The other group option is to actually have them spawn as paratroopers. So when the zone's activated, rather than spawn on the ground, they'll spawn at whatever height you put it as. You need to turn that on. Whatever height you put it as, they'll spawn up in the air, and then they'll drop down and they'll parachute. You can change some settings there about how they're located. If you're parachuting vehicles, you can turn smoke on or off. It basically just deploys smoke when the vehicle hits the ground, and the realism just changes what you can parachute. So you can't really parachute a tank, but if you turn that off, it'll probably work. One thing to note is some of the generic ArmA settings won't work. So the variable name and init field are probably the main ones, and you can see I've got ASOReDit replacements for that. So if you need to name a unit, use this, not this one, and that for the init if you need to init anything on the unit. And I've got some common ones used here. If you want to take all these weapons away, just put that on, for example. The persistent setting is basically for ASOR. It won't get, when the unit's dead, he won't get cleaned up by our cleanup thing. So if you've got a unit that needs to be identified by us, you don't want him to disappear, or some object like a laptop or something like that you don't want to disappear or get cleaned up, and set it to persistent and it'll remain there. Just remember, If they're not linked to the zone and they're not spawned by ASORedit, none of these settings will apply. One other thing that will work with ASORedit is using the edit loadout on the unit. So you can configure the unit with Arsenal to change his gear and make him look like you want him, however you want him to look, and then ASOReDit will spawn him with that gear. That's the basics of the settings. Like I said, the next video will cover tasks. Thanks for watching.